In 2004, in the wake of 9/11, neuroscientist and philosopher, quote unquote, Sam Harris published The End of Faith, arguing not only that religious belief is false, but that it is actively dangerous. His book sparked a wave of publications by like minded thinkers. Philosopher Daniel Dennett was breaking the spell, evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins in his book The God Delusion, and journalist Christopher Hitchens' God is Not Great. Together, these four men, dubbed the Four Horsemen, led what became known as the New Atheist Movement, an aggressive and unapologetic critique of religion that defined public discourse on faith for much of the 2000s. Between 2004 and 2011, New Atheism became a cultural force. Public debates flourished, best-selling books topped the charts, and religion was subjected to a kind of rhetorical assault rarely seen in the modern Western world. The New Atheists didn't just question God's existence, they lambasted faces irrational, dangerous, and coercive to civilization. At the start of the movement, roughly 77% of Americans identified as Christian, with only 1 to 2% as atheists and 20% unaffiliated. By the end of, by the end of the New Atheist movement, around 2011, the numbers had shifted dramatically. Only 63% were still identified as Christian, 4 to 5% as atheists, and the nuns had grown to nearly 30%. Why this percentage of self-professed Christians has stabilized in recent years, was a subtle but important trend has emerged, a slow and steady rise in religiosity among young men. Now that the bleeding has stopped, it is time for a proper retrospective on the New Atheist moment. Why did it emerge? Why did it catch on? And why did it ultimately fail? With that, let's get started. I'm here with my friend Jeremy. Jeremy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Doing good. I haven't talked to you in a while, but I'm saying
Yeah.
I want to do a podcast on New Atheists. Like, who do I want to talk to about that? Like, Jeremy. That's the guy.
Nice.
I don't think anyone hates the New Atheists more than Jeremy. But it's good reason.
Yeah, so that was a good introduction. So yeah, I don't know. How do you want to begin the conversation? Actually,
well, let's talk about how it came about, because I think it's pretty obvious now. The 9/11 was the spark that caused the New Atheist movement, because it became a acceptable way to point to Islam and the terror attack as an example of why religion leads to violence. And so they took the Islamic examples of violence and applied those same problems to all versions of faith at all. Instead of it being a specifically Islamic saying or Arabic saying, it became a problem of religion itself. So I think 9/11 was kind of the spark that normalized the attack.
Yeah, I do think that kind of I guess tracks the way that people look at it, but many times I actually think it began much earlier than that. You know, I mean, especially the writings of Christopher Hitchens, for example. He made the whole documentary about what's her name, Mother Teresa, after she died, or was it right before she died? That he was just calling her that she was actually evil and stuff like that. And really, when you see the sentiments that was happening, probably 10 to 20 years prior to that, I would say a lot of the so like, for example, Bishop Barron has a good quote where he says, "There's actually nothing new about the New Atheist, nothing new, something new about the sentiments and everything," and I think there was actually more of a growing resentment against Christianity, really pretty much in the 90s. And probably the moment that I think of the most clearly was that hoax, but a lot of people believed it was true. And I can't remember the person's name. I probably could look it up really quick, but it was some guy that died. They said that he was killed because he was gay, that a bunch of teenage people killed him because he was gay. MTV had this huge movement because of that event. It was just a really, really big cultural movement where I really began to see a lot of that new atheistic resentment and argumentations against Christianity. And I think what happened with September 11th is that it bolstered those arguments even more. It made it more, I guess, accepted, and it made it more into pop culture, because now through what happened in New York kind of affected the whole country and their sentiments against religions in general. And then I think that's when a lot of the popularity of what it kind of already existed, especially with Christopher Hitchens and Daniel Dennett and the other guy, not Sam Harris, Dawkins.
Dawkins?
Yeah. Like a lot of their writings was actually through the 80s and the 90s, and Sam Harris is kind of the post 9/11 entrance to the new atheist like world. And then I think when those four horsemen of what do they call them? Four horsemen of whatever.
Yeah, four horsemen of new atheism, I think.
Yeah.
So Reddit.
Yes, yeah, and I think when Sam Harris entered the scene, I think a lot of the post 9/11 is actually more Sam Harris than it is the other three guys. The other three guys were kind of already existing in that space, doing a lot of the argumentations and infiltrating the culture at least 20 years prior to Sam Harris's popularity.
No, absolutely. I know, like you said, Mr. Barron did say there's nothing really new about the new atheists, and you can trace back a lot of their kind of dismissal or rhetoric, hateful rhetoric to things like Baruch Spinoza, Enlightenment. Basically, it's all just the way I view it. Basically, is it was the Enlightenment philosophers, the worst of them, pretty much became very popular. Became like a popular version of the Enlightenment critics of religion. And it really was a huge. I mean, you go back to some of these old debates they were doing; they were massive in views on YouTube, and this was in the early days of YouTube. You know, like a couple million views. On
you're right. Yeah,
what's his name? That this would be a little tangent, but I'm so upset and mad that like the most of the Christians that were put forward to debate the new atheists, one of them was constantly Dinesh D'Souza. And it's like, what the fuck is this Indian? Why is this Indian the go-to guy? He's not even good at this. Like, he's never made a single good argument in his life. I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, you're so fucking stupid. I mean, so anyway, I got some of the arguments from some of their books. So I want to go through real quick. This is a passage from Which the Darkens the God Delusion. This is often the most popular. I think it's arguably the most popular, or at least the most lasting book of the New Atheist movement, because it seems very. The other one, like God is Not Great, has a lot of polemical stuff about political things of the day, but it was kind of outdated. This is the one that has the least outdated, I would say.
I would say Dawkins definitely is probably the most significant figure, which I'll probably say Sam Harris kind of was the second, especially with his Letter to a Christian Nation, which I think was pretty. But but I would agree with you. I think Richard Dawkins is kind of the guy when people think of the new atheist in the end of the day.
Yeah, this is him supposedly disproving Thomas Aquinas' arguments. So I'm just gonna. This is a quote from his book. I'll read it real quick, and we can then react and engage to how dumb this is.
Yeah,
Thomas Aquinas' proofs, the 5 proofs asserted by Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century, don't prove anything and are easily, though I hesitate to say so, given his eminence, exposed as vacuous. The first 3 are just different ways of saying the same thing, and they can't be considered together. They can be considered together. All involve an infinite regress. The answer to a question raises in a prior question, and so ad infinitum. The unmoved mover, nothing moves without prior mover. This leads us to a regress from what's the only escape is God. Something had to make the first move, and that's something we call God. The uncaused cause, nothing is caused by itself except every effect that has a prior cause, and again, we are all pushed back to regress. It has to be terminated by a first cause, that which we call God. The cosmological argument, there must have been a time when no physical thing existed, but since physical things exist now, there must have been something non-physical to bring them into existence, and that's something we call God. All 3 of these arguments rely on the same regress and invoke God to terminate it. They make the entirely unwarranted assumption that God himself is immune to the regress, even if we allow the dubious luxury of arbitrarily conjuring up a terminator as an infinite regress and giving it a name simply because we need one. There's absolutely no reason to endow that terminator with any properties normally ascribed to God: omnipotence, omnipotence, whatever that one is. Goodness, creativity, or of design, or to say nothing of such human attributes of listening to prayers, forgiving sins, and reading our innermost thoughts. Clearly, he doesn't understand any of the arguments for God. Clearly, I mean, the infinite regress thing is like, okay, yeah, the Kalam cosmological argument does kind of have to work within the bounds of infinite regress and infinity is not being possible, but that completely ignores the hierarchical cause that is necessary to ground all of it. It's completely just ignored.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, his kind of rephrasing of Aquinas' arguments really, I don't think he gets any of them right.
No.
Not even in a loose sense. Like they're just yeah, they're just bad. It doesn't really take into account the essential changes as opposed to accidental changes. It doesn't really take into account really that it's not an infinite regress in time as you were saying, but it's actually a higher of infinity. Um, that yeah, and so yeah, his arguments are just. I mean, his representation of Aquinas' arguments are just intrinsically bad, and I do think they're one of the main reasons why this was so convincing, especially for the time, is that Ed Fraser actually gave a lecture about this one time that that many Christians just got lazy and they didn't really even understand their faith that well anymore. A lot of Catholic apologetics actually got pretty damn bad during the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s that they themselves had to brush up on what these argumentations actually were. And so like the ordinary people were convinced by it, obviously, because they didn't really pick up Aquinas and read it. And if they did try to read it, most of them won't be able to understand it. And I think that's just it's one of the reasons why I think it got so popular during this time that they were writing and kind of taking over the culture.
One thing Ed Fraser did say in his book on the last superstition is Richard Dawkins wouldn't know metaphysics from Metamucil, which is pretty fun. But this really bothers me, I think, the most is that he's an evolutionary biologist and he doesn't understand the difference between efficient cause and like the type of change. Like, you're a biologist. One of the main things you study is just the change of the biology. You should have a better understanding of change. Like, it's like I do like his. I'm a fan of evolutionary biology. I think it's an interesting thing to listen to, and he has interesting arguments in that field. I won't deny that his arguments when he's just doing evolutionary biology is pretty neat.
Yeah,
but the moment he steps into anything outside of that, it's like, just shut the fuck up, dude. This is not your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, just the way the whole book it's written. I don't know if a lot of your listeners have read him, but he tries to make it into like this hypothesis scientific argument where he presents the God hypothesis, and that alone is already just stupid because he's trying to find an entity in the world. Well, once you propose the God hypothesis, that's what you're doing. And I think just for most philosophers and theologians throughout history, that alone already just seems nonsensical. It's like, well, of course you're not going to find anything because the very conception of God or being itself is something that cannot be in the world. It just can't be in principle. This isn't even just an inductive reasoning. Just in principle, that which is the foundation of all reality cannot itself be in reality. Or as Heidegger says, the being of beings is not itself a being. It's just a foundational philosophical concept that whether one is Christian or not, you're just trying to understand basic metaphysical realities that in principle it cannot be discovered in the world. And so it's like his entire shtick is just retarded. It's fundamentally retarded. It isn't just accidentally that he gets some information wrong. The foundation of his entire project is stupid.
Well, this was the big problem with the new atheists. This is what Bishop Barron pointed out. They treated God as a competing being in the world and not the grounding of being. And the moment you try to have God be competing for things, you're gonna compete as a competing member of different beings in the world. You lost the plot. It's over. You're not gonna understand any of it.
Yes,
that's actually what the new atheist. There's two silver linings to the new atheist moment. One of them, I think, is it revitalized and caused a lot of Christians to kind of go back to the text, to go back to Aquinas, to go back to Augustine or Bonaventure, and it led to a resurgence of popular Christian apologetics, which I think nowadays has kind of been a bit of a problem. I'll point to Catholic Answers, twin horn types.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different problem. But the other bright side, it's going to be a weird thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, is it really did put a nail in the coffin in the literal reading of the text evangelical young earth types.
Yes, I agree with
really
that. Yeah.
destroyed that Ken Ham, nothing anymore. It really destroyed that kind of soft, incorrect version of Christianity. We're not the only people really left that can be respected are the Catholics, the Orthodox, and people like William Lane Craig with his theistic personalism and all that baggage. But that kind of it's no one really believes or respects the young earth creationists and the Bible Belt evangelical who has to be all read literally. No one believes that or treats that fairly anymore. And that's kind of I think that's a good movement. That's a good intellectual cultural movement to not have that kind of respect for the hardcore fundamentalist types. But so that's a bit on Dawkins. I can still hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. I was just getting a lot of interference, so I put my my AirPods in, and I think it switched the mic for a second. But I put it, so never mind. Yeah, and anyways, what were we going to say?
I was just finishing my thought on the silver lining of the new atheist moment about the absolute rejection.
Right. Yeah. That it kind of also it did kind of kill Protestantism culturally. It seems like there, at least on Twitter, and how much Twitter is a reflection of real life, I think is still debated, even though I think increasingly more blurred. There does seem to be almost as if there are Protestants that are trying to revitalize Protestantism in a more intellectual light, because I do think that the entire more even in terms of Catholics, like the charismatic types, pretty much was killed by the new atheists, and that's probably the best thing that happened. That the new atheists ever accomplished, really. It's like, well, yeah, nobody takes those type of people serious anymore. Nobody takes the Bible thumper serious anymore, and that was a long time coming, I think, anyways.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I personally, I obviously hate and dislike a lot of the new atheist movement, but I can't hate it too much because it's the reason I got into reading philosophy and theology. My friend became a new atheist, and his stepdad would read Sam Harris, and I'd be over at his house for sleepover or something. And Dad'd be reading The Moral Landscape, and so I of course had to read it to figure out what was going on. And I remember that was like the first weird philosophy book I read was Moral Landscape, and I'm like, oh, this is retarded. This is so dumb. And it's really this is actually The Moral Landscape. No book I think in the last 20 years has been so completely destroyed by history, because we saw an example of the Moral Landscape's theory in practice during COVID. The idea of scientists, elites ruling us all and making these decisions based purely on facts. We saw what happened with that in COVID. History,
that's true.
Less than 6 years, I think, after that book came out, it was just destroyed by the reality of history, which is really funny to me.
That is. I never thought of that, actually, but yeah, you're right. I read that book, unfortunately. I remember reading it. I was like, I think Sam Harris out of was probably the dumbest one. I don't know if you would agree with me there, but he seemed like he was the dumbest one. Because when you read The Moral Landscape, I remember at the very beginning, he bases everything on this in this narrative that he thinks is gonna it gives you an intuition into how we understand intuitively, what something good is, by taking what he calls like the absolute suffering compared to absolute human flourishing. And the example of absolute suffering is basically like that that stupid, I shouldn't call it stupid, whatever, but the it was pushed onto the youths of the time that Africa was having these child soldiers or whatever. They had to kill their own mother, and it was like this
in Liberia.
Yes, yeah. And the whole story was about that, or scenario. But the one I do remember was his scenario of the good life. And it was about, a husband and a wife being married together without children, both having careers, living in a city in some kind of loft. And I was just thinking to myself, I was like, that sounds like a horrible life. Like,
Sounds like a Jewish psyop, honestly.
Yes. I was like, how is that your example of the good life? You want to live childless in a city while your wife has a career and not doing any of her wifely duties, and you're completely cucked sitting on your bed reading a book with her while she's probably fucking somebody else. The entire scenario that you brought up was so laughably bad that I thought to myself, the rest of the book is going to be equally as bad, and it really was in the end, because he does one thing, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, and secondly, it's like, you like how much of you have to be to think that is the pinnacle of like human existence. Yeah. To be sitting in a bed next to a wife who doesn't want to have your kids, and reading books together while you both find fulfillment in a career. I mean, that is depression, that is meaninglessness in its like modern fundamental form. It's disgusting. And I do think that he's the dumbest one, and I think he's been exposed that way more and more.
About him being exposed as an idiot.
Oh, great. Yeah, we'll get to that one later. But yeah, Sam Harris definitely is the dumbest one out of all of them.
Yeah, like I respect Sam Harris, I think, the most out of him, despite also thinking he's the dumbest one. Because he's the only one who actually went, I guess we do need to have some kind of grounding for objective morality. Let me try to make one. Like, it's stupid and wrong, but at least he understood that you can't just tear down these pillars without offering a new one up, And I respect him for at least trying, even if his definition of good is like it's a complete tautology. It's like goodness is what maximizes well-being because it maximizes well-being. It's like that's what. Come on, dog.
It's so bad.
He's clearly trying to create an evolutionary a moral teleology based on evolutionary science, and it's just fails. Fails so spectacularly.
Like, if any of your listeners have not read him, they have to just for shits and giggles, because it really is as bad as we're presenting it. You weren't yourself. Are you like? Are you sure you're not still on drugs? That's the only thing that pops into my head. Because like was it in that book, or I think it was in his book called Waking Up. It was like spiritual guide for atheists, and like the first two chapters was just about him taking ecstasy. And I was just like, is that really, this is what your spirituality is going to be based on? Talk about how he felt infinite love for everybody, and that there was no more anger, and that he was a transcendent feeling. It was just like, wow, okay. And so it began to make sense a little more, knowing that he's just a little druggy as well.
Oh, I hate so much the new atheist spirituality to drugs, because that is one thing that has really stuck around, despite all the new atheist arguments kind of going by the wayside and no one really taking it seriously. Yeah. The spirituality to drugs has still like latched on, and it's a common thing, and it's a true spiritual moment cannot be triggered by artificial. Like it can be assisted by artificial things. I'd say, like incense in a church, that kind of the organs, the Gregorian chant can stimulate a spiritual moment, but you can't trespass into the spiritual by artificial means. Right. It's such a it's like I can't remember who said it on Twitter. I think it was a Garfield bot, or I can't remember who said it, but he said you have shit libs with no spiritual strengths being absolutely one-sided by ancient peyote demons and coming back into society. We just let them. It's so true.
Wow.
I mean, I know people who actually had their brains just one-sided by these drugs. It's like, what the fuck, dude? What happened?
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. It's funny that people don't realize, especially the druggies themselves don't realize how they have this permanent damage, because you meet them and you're like, well, and you ask whether they're still on it, and they say no, and it's like, wow, so you're just permanently high. It seems like that's what it is, like you fucked up your brain so much that it's just a perma high. But I actually do find that part interesting that you're talking about, because I remember there was this little song and dance that Seth MacFarlane did on Family Guy, and one of the phrases that Brian said was for the 80s that they kept the weed but ditched the cause. From basically ditch the cause from the 60s and 70s. And it seems like for whatever reason, whenever these movements evolve with a certain cause, the drugs remain while the cause is kind of not existent anymore. And it seems like what you're saying is kind of happening now. Is like none of them are really taking any of these new atheists serious, but they're still getting high. They're still, just taking and talking about how transcendent the experience is, when all they're doing is just fucking themselves up even more.
Yeah. Well, here's what on that point about the new atheism kind of falling away. I think the theory I have for why it kind of fell away has sadly nothing to do with the religious right pushing back against it. It's that so many of their polemical arguments involved pointing to the evils of Islam. And as liberals got more and more captured by the woke ideology, it no longer became fashionable to point out, because that was just totally insensitive. So they lost all institutional backing because the elite systems moved towards intersectionality, and therefore these people they're not woke. That's why a lot of them ended up on the whole IDW thing, the intellectual dark web. It's because they were the only place they would still be accepted, despite their politically incorrect takes on Islam.
Yeah. So you think the left is what actually destroyed the left? Killed it. I wonder how much. I wonder how much also, because actually I think that's kind of indisputable. I think you have a really good point there, but it seems like the other reason why is also a negative one, not so much the positive of how good the Christians did, but I think it's just wokeism in general became so cringe, and anything associated with it at all, which is atheistic, so became kind of cringy. And then Sam Harris walks out with his like neck beard, and he just looks bad. and I think a lot of it is just the lack of aesthetics, and just the entire movement just became kind of icky, and nobody wanted to be associated with it. And then the people who were talking about Christianity tend to look better, and there was like, okay, I'm just gonna start going with that. And it even seems like that's kind of what happened even with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan cares about his health, and he cares about looking good, and then the guy that really is starting to convince him was that Protestant guy that he had on there. What's his name?
Wes Huff.
Wes Huff. Yeah, and you look at him, it's because Wes Huff is also well built. He has good muscles. He's a good looking guy, and I think it's just something as simple as a good looking guy talking to Joe Rogan. Like, yeah, I kind of want to associate myself with him rather than like somebody that looks like Sam Harris, who kind of just looks stupid. I mean, like I always said, he looks like an ugly version of Ben Stiller. It looks like Ben Stiller's ugly cousin. And so it's like, yeah.
One at the Rogan point, I find it very funny. He's going to a Protestant church, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
And he had that comedian Shane Gillis was on the podcast, and he was like apostatizer. Yeah. You got to go back to the Catholic church, man. That's where it's at. And Shane doesn't even go to the Catholic church. He's like, it's Catholic, man. We built the West. That's where you got to go.
Yeah.
This is my argument. Like, we built the West. We did it. We built it.
Yeah.
It's so true. So true. We built the West.
I know.
Yeah. No, Sam Harris. I mean,
good.
No,
yeah, because both Joe Rogan and Shane Gillis were raised Catholic, and so yeah, I don't know how much practicing he has, but I'm sure Shane Gillis pretty much is still culturally Catholic, and he's just.
He's on a podcast. He made one of my favorite points. Yeah, one of the things he said on a podcast, I love it so much. He said, when he goes to mass with his family, like he's doing Christmas, he just gets a blessing because he won't go to confession, so he won't receive the Eucharist. Like he says, I'm not going to do that. That's the body and blood of our Lord. Like
he's still Catholic then.
He call himself an atheist. He said he doesn't really believe in God, but he won't receive it because he won't go to confess it. And I'm like, he gets it.
Yeah,
he gets it.
He gets it exactly. He just needs to get married and have kids, and then it straightens up his life.
Yes,
it's a secret sauce for most people.
Yeah, and I don't think you can't ignore how much the term Reddit and the absolute the way we humiliate the Reddit opinions. I mean, the neckbeard fedora tipping atheist meme killed it. They killed any cultural relevance.
Exactly. Yes.
One meme.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just that everything associated with which is kind of gross. Mm-hmm. And it just got exposed as gross, and nobody wants that. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I guess the only kudos I could give to what the Christians did is that they took advantage of that, and they at least had the opportunity to, after the ickiness of atheism is present in everybody, they were able to interject the Christian ideas. And I think a lot of people are adopting it, at least culturally, even if like fully philosophically and theologically convinced. I think culturally they are.
I mean, it's so cultural. It's culturally mainstream now that even Richard Dawkins is calling himself a cultural Christian.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like you can't avoid it.
Sargon of Akkad. That's how he is. Now he says he takes his kids to mass and stuff, and it's like it's now it just has become. He still says he doesn't believe God, but he just wants his kids to grow up in that. And a lot of his reasons that he gave was kind of interesting. Because he looks at it culturally, and he just says that he feels like his parents basically robbed him of a childhood which would have given him the foundation to believe in God. And so he wants to at least give that foundation to his kids. I'm like, that's at least respectable. Hopefully that could lead him to actually, becoming Christian. But it's at least he's recognizing something good there that he's trying to offer to his kids. And I can't help but and maybe because I'm a parent and more of a sucker to that, is I can't help but at least be very empathetic and happy that he's at least doing that, because, as it says in the Bible, those who lead the young ones astray, it's better that he, wraps a millstone around his neck and pretty much die of death.
Speaking
and he's at least not doing that. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw or not, but someone started selling millstones with trans pride flags all around the sides. With the Bible verse nice. The millstone at pride parades, they had a millstone set up and they were selling them with trans pride flags around them.
That is awesome.
So great.
Yeah.
So the other one, so we talk about Harris, we talk about Dawkins. Let's talk about Christopher Hitchens, because he's the one who was the least intellectual, but the most rhetorically. But he was a firebrand. I've listened to a few of his debates recently, and none of his arguments are good, but he does say them in a very fun, not intelligent, but a fun way.
Yes, yeah.
But when you watch him debate like William Lane Craig, there is no argument there. It's just kind of rhetorically throw and sit at the wall. And he has this one argument he does make, and it's not that. I'm gonna try to put it in the best possible way, and then attack it. That the atheist is not making a positive claim. It's just a claim that the negative doesn't exist. Therefore, there's no argument for atheism. It's just a statement of non-belief. Therefore, you can't make an argument for atheism. You only make arguments against a belief in God. And so there was no positive argument to be made. And that was rhetorically, I guess that's a decent way of putting it, of arguing it, but what's the point then? You're just going to admit ignorance and agnosticism. That's just admitting. This is why I hate agnosticism so much, is that at least the atheist has the balls to make a commitment. The agnosticism, they accept ignorance as a blanket to be comfortable in, and it's I hate it. It makes me think of Sextus Empiricus in the ancient Greeks. It's like, what's the point of all this? You're just saying nothing. You're just saying, we can't know anything. So shut up about it all. It's like, that's not even philosophy at that point. That's just being stupid. I had a whole class on Sextus in my college philosophy introduction class recently, and I remember thinking, this is why. What's the point? little rant on sexist, but he says how do you put it? Not taking comfort in putting things in opposition and saying here's why you can't know leads to eudaimonia. Whereas, like, you can't know, therefore you're happy or not knowing. Like, okay, but you're missing a gap. Not knowing equals happiness. How? You don't. There's no explanation of how.
Yes.
It just states it. It's like you have all these writings and all these arguments. Not one argument for why it actually relates to happiness. You just state that it does. What the fuck, dude? Give me the reason. I couldn't find it. I looked.
Yeah. And it's crazy how much his argument about that you can't prove a negative became such a popular argument, even though it's fallacious.
Yeah.
Right? There actually no. I remember when I was teaching at the university, like in 2017, 2018, 2019 and stuff, that I always had to tell that to my students. I was like, well, once we're studying logic, you look at categorical syllogisms. You could either have an affirmative argument or you could have a negative argument. Like there is no such principle that you prove a negative. No, you can. That's there are rules of how you can proceed. For example, you can't have like two negative premises. You need at least one affirmative premise, but and that another principle is like if you have one negative premise, then the conclusion must be negative, and so there are like basic rules of how you're supposed to argue for negative principles. But the idea of a negative is just it's a lie. Like him saying that and making it the core of his argument really makes no sense. It's like, no, you can. If you're saying that you don't believe in something, you're saying that it is not the case that whatever you're just like, if you're saying that I don't believe in unicorns, you're saying that it is not the case that I believe in unicorns. And so once you make that argument, you are making a proposition. It isn't as if a negative proposition ceases to be a proposition. It just has the quality of being negative. And it was a ridiculous argument that for some reason became so mainstream that there's still people till today that believe that you can't prove a negative, and it's just not the case. Logically speaking, you can make a logical argument for a negative.
Yeah. Here's a quote from Hitchens I want to read real quick. It's from his book God is Not Great. Thanks to the telescope and the microscope, religion no longer offers an explanation of anything important. Faith is a surrender of the mind. It's surrender of reason. It is a surrender of the only thing that makes us different from other mammals. It's first thing I want to point out on that one is religion no longer offers an explanation of anything. Just completely, it's the extreme materialism of it all, and it's because the only way Hitchens ever found meaning was in drugs and smoking and drinking. It's like the underlying assumption, the unspoken assumption of so much of the new atheist materialism is that happiness is just happiness can be correlated to pleasure. And I don't see a single good argument. I get into the argument all the time with people. They say, well, I'm happy now. Like, no, you're pleasurable now. There's a difference. You're experiencing more pleasure. That does not equal happiness. That's not a contingent necessary correlation. That the more dopamine you fire, the happier you are. No, the more pleasure you're experiencing, sure, that does not mean you're happy.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, that's Hitchens. The only one left that we talk about is Daniel Dennett, and I have zero respect for Dennett. I can at least respect Dawkins for evolutionary biology, Harris for recognizing the need for some objective moral structure, Hitchens for his incredible rhetoric and skill. Dennett offers nothing. There's literally nothing there I respect. What's this whole philosophy of the mind, homunculus is all the way down nonsense? I mean,
yeah.
There's no reason to respect this guy. There's nothing there.
He's like the Ringo Starr of the group. Yeah, nobody cares about him. I actually, even during the height of the popularity of the new atheists, I don't think anybody really cared about Daniel Dennett. He just wasn't a very good thinker. He wasn't a very good philosopher. He wasn't good at anything really. No. And so I think that's why he didn't really make that many public appearances. he wasn't like a good debater, so he didn't really go to. I actually don't know if he ever went to one. I've never seen one, but I guess there
think he did,
could
like,
have been a
one debate was like a Baptist.
Oh, did he? Okay, yes.
There was like
So-
one Baptist pastor that debated him. I didn't watch that. I watched a lot of the New Atheist debates, trying to get. Dude, I
Yeah.
spent the last few days just watching all the New Atheist content I could.
yeah,
That was a penance. I mean, I used to just go to my priest tomorrow or today and be like, hey man, I watched all New Atheist stuff yesterday. That counts. That's my penance. Okay. You gotta count me that one, Father, please. Give me an indulgence or something, 'cause I suffered. It
yes, yeah. Those,
not one good
yeah, those
argument.
debates were bad.
It's
Yeah,
And
yeah. I don't think any of them were successful in any of the debates, really.
no. I mean, the most frustrating part of this watching the debates was just the caliber of the Christian they put forward. Ken Ham, Dinesh D'Souza, random televangelist pastors. It's like, why? Not one. The only philosopher they ever actually debated was William Lane Craig, and much as I
Right, I
like
think
and
he was the only
appreciate
one.
Craig, he's theistic personalism and understanding the Trinity is so ass backwards.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so I got a clip here
Yeah.
from Chris from let me get it up here. This is from Sam Harris. I think this is actually, to me at least, this is the final nail in the coffin of Sam Harris. Let me get the clip up here. Present share screen. This is from his appearance on the Trigonometry podcast. Okay. Let me go full screen. Let me know if you can hear it.
Like, I'm not going to make.
Can you hear it?
Like, I'm
Yes,
not
I
going to
can.
make
Yeah.
magical claims about flying saviors who are literally going to come down. Where is heaven exactly? Given that we have, multiple telescopes up there, beaming back, tens of billions of years worth of information. Like, I'm not going to make.
Where is heaven? We have telescopes out there. I hate it. I hate that so much. I can't think of a dumber fucking statement in my life. That's the equivalent of saying 2 and 2 is 5. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And and their faces just made the whole clip funnier. Just the way that they're looking at him like he's an idiot. That was. You're right. I do remember that moment. That was kind of the nail in his coffin. That and the whole COVID, his whole COVID response was retarded.
In the same interview, he said, "I don't care if Hunter Biden's laptop had cyanide put on it. It's not. That was not as big a threat to democracy as Donald Trump." It's like, what the fuck, dude? Just shut the hell up. Just go away, dog. Go away. It's This is another clip I have here. I only got 2 clips saved, but this is a clip from Richard Dawkins in a debate with an Anglican priest on one of the BBC's videos. Let me get that up here. Okay, am I meant to write yeah. Okay, let me set the screen.
Whatever else is.
George Pell. Thank you. The trouble, well, there are many troubles with Richard's teachings, but a fundamental one is that he dumbs down God and he soups up nothing. He continually talks as though God is some sort of upmarket figure within space and time. Now, from 450, 500 BC, where with the Greek philosophers, God is outside space and time. God is necessary, self-sufficient, uncaused, unconditioned. That's the hypothesis you've got to wrestle with. The second thing is that Krauss says nothing about the Big Bang coming out of nothing. Admittedly, he comes clean on about 6 pages from the end of his book, and I don't know whether Richard has read it that far because he gave it a foreword. What he says is what Richard is describing as nothing is a sort of a mixture of particles and perhaps a vacuum with electromagnetic forces working on it. That's what Krauss is talking about under the heading of nothing. And there's a very good review of this in the New York Times, not a pro-religious paper at all, where Krauss is absolutely denied and demolished, although especially by his supporters claiming that he says things come out of nothing. He doesn't say that.
It's a
You
matter,
can quickly respond to
you
that before the
can
next question.
dispute exactly what's meant by nothing, but whatever it is, it's very, very simple. And
Divine simplicity. Like you
Yes.
think if he would hear all that. You think if he was actually like a real good critic of Christianity, he would understand that
Yeah.
for so much of the history of the faith, divine simplicity was the understanding of what God is. And then he already argues like, well, nothing. The priest made a bunch of very good points and arguments, and to hear him just go, well, it must be simple then. It's like, yeah, dumbass, it must be simple. That's what we're saying. It's like, yeah, dumbass, it is. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I remember Ed Fazer in his book pretty much said that it's obvious that he didn't read any of Aquinas, because all he had to do was flip the page, and he would the further argumentations, like for the divine simplicity, is already at play, and so it's he's an idiot.
Yeah. No, so let's kind of go into the ending of the new atheists. So COVID, I think, killed a lot of them. I think Daniel Dennett is actually dead. Christopher Hitchens is actually dead. Richard Dawkins probably won't be around much longer. And Sam Harris's cultural relevancy has just been destroyed by COVID, his Trump derangement syndrome, and the fracturing of the IDW. Because, I mean, thank God, because that was the cringiest shit ever. What kind of intellectual dark web has the most mainstream liberal opinions? It's literally Eric Weinstein.
I know.
If there's any single alive, quote unquote single alive, who needs to just be silenced forever, it's Eric Weinstein.
Yes.
That man should never be allowed to speak in public again. He blocked me on Twitter because I told him if I ever see his fat ass in person, I'm gonna kick his ass. So he blocked me on Twitter. He's on my on-site. Like, if I ever see him in public, I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail for that one. He's got to be stopped. He needs to be silenced. I mean, I don't know. He made an argument on Joe Rogan's podcast years ago, and I every few days I remember it because it's the dumbest argument I've ever heard about how we have to go to Mars because the institutions and systems we have are too far gone and destroyed. So we need to go to Mars and start over. It's like, but you're not gonna. Why were they destroyed, Eric? What was the cause? Maybe it's something. Clearly, it's something embedded into the systems you're trying to restart. You're gonna go to Mars, kickstart off in the 90s, and in 30 years saying we have to go to Venus. You're not solving the problem. Yeah. It's so retarded.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, politically, you know, so the new atheists, for all the thoughts, did lead to some actually really good atheists, like Alex O'Connor. I think he's the best. He is probably the biggest name, mainstream, biggest name today, at least in intellectual space for atheism. He actually does make positive arguments. I think he has I don't think it's obviously I don't think it was a good argument, but I think it's a good rhetorical argument that the existence of unnecessary animal suffering is an argument against the existence of a merciful God. Now, I don't think that argument works, but it definitely has some. You can argue it, and it has some rhetorical weight. You know, it's better than at least what Sam Harris or Dawkins were putting forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think his other, I don't know if it's much of an argumentation, but it is at least a sentiment that he expresses pretty well, is that he struggles with the idea that he has never had a spiritual experience. And it seems like a lot of the reasons why he's not convinced by any of the arguments for God is not really intellectual. It's the fact that most of the people that he argues with make certain statements such as, my belief in God is not rested on these arguments. My belief in God is rested on some kind of spiritual experience that I had. And I think every Christian that he talks to pretty much have said that to him. And because of that, I think it trivializes the arguments to the point that he cannot really be convinced by them, not because he's incapable of seeing the rationale of the arguments. I think he's incapable because the moment somebody says that is the moment that the argument carries less weight. Like he thinks that then, basically it's like if I'm talking in his person, right? Like I heard him say variations of this. So obviously this is not a quote, but just his sentiment seems like if God exists and my faith is actually dependent on the grace that God has to give me in order for me to believe, why hasn't he given me that grace? And it seems like every time I hear him fundamentally objecting to anything about God, it's not that he disagrees with the arguments presented. It always comes down to his lack of spiritual experience.
Yeah, that's a point. Gideon Lazar, the Byzantine Scotus, made on Twitter about that. He goes, we shouldn't be shocked by this. Perhaps, and it's completely. He said it was completely reasonable to say, perhaps God is withholding the graces from Alex until a time because Alex is doing more good for the Christian side by being a fair opponent. I think that was kind of like in the grand working of all divine sayings, Alex O'Connor is doing a positive now, and that when he does receive those graces and becomes a convert, more positives will come about. And I think that's a fair prediction. I do think Alex O'Connor will be a prophet. I think you see him talk to Bishop Barron. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna be one. He's gonna be one. I mean, that podcast you did with Bishop Barron, I think I've listened to that podcast more than any other podcast. Every few months, I'm like,
yes, it was a good one.
Again. It's so good. I mean, and Bishop Barron, he's so great.
I know. Yeah, Bishop Barron's one of my top guys, man.
He's so good. I remember talking about the motivation for great art, and Alex O'Connor says, "Well, couldn't it just be that we're scared of dying, so we try to create something immortal to live on past ourselves?" And Bishop Barron goes, "Alex, you don't even believe that yourself." And he goes through the arguments and examples, and it's like, you don't even believe that yourself, Alex. He's so pastoral about it that it never comes up like being a dick.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
he's so good at it. And I would have loved to have seen Mr. Barron and like Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins. I would have loved to see him actually, because he's debated Alex on like the Unbelievable podcast. He's not opposed to doing debates. I would have loved to have seen him engage as one of the new atheist types.
Oh yeah, they would not be able to handle it. I don't think.
No.
Yeah,
most of the debate would be him explaining things to him again.
Yes. But yeah, I think I have the same hope that you do about Alex O'Connor. Like I do think that it's inevitable that he's gonna become Catholic, really more specifically. I don't think he's gonna become a Protestant or anything.
No. You should check out his he did like a couple hour interview on the problem of divine hiddenness with Father Gregory Pine. It's like a 2-hour long podcast. It's really, really good. It is basically all on the problem of experiencing it spiritually. It's the entire conversation is about that, really. And so it's a great one. No, another thing we got to bring up in reference to the New Atheist is that another nail in the coffin for it was the rise of Jordan Peterson.
That is true.
In the vacuum of meaning that New Atheist created was kind of filled with Jordan Peterson, clean your room and define the meaning. I don't think, as much as we have our problem with Jordan Peterson, specifically recently and nowadays, when he first came on the scene, he was a different animal when he first came on the scene. He was really good.
Yeah, he's a lot more influential. Yeah. Yeah, I never got too into him. I think just because maybe the age was different. I think he appealed more to people younger than I was. But I do appreciate he brought it really to the forefront of many young people's minds, like the idea of God and everything. He did his entire like Bible series, which I just I don't know, like I appreciate him for what he did, but I do think that I'm glad that people grew beyond.
Yes,
if that makes sense. Yeah, like I think he was necessary. necessary for what he was, but it also was necessary that everybody that followed him had to grow beyond him, and he helped that happen by getting addicted to drugs. Like he helped everybody move on from him. That he wrote like these 12 steps of life, and that he himself became addicted to drugs, and then it was like, okay, maybe there's something more than what he's saying, and I think that's what happened to a lot of people.
Well, one of the main values he offered was the re-mythologizing of the Bible as a work of literary genius to be explored in detail, and not just the way the atheist treated it was like, oh, it's just a list of commandments you have to follow, like Moses' laws of conquest.
Right.
It's actually one of my points I really
Yeah.
liked in the debate Sam Harris did with Jordan Peterson, is that Sam Harris makes all
Yeah.
the points that the Bible being insufficient for proper morality and points to all the problem passages and stuff. And Jordan Peterson goes, well, the Bible is a narrative. You have to read the whole story in light of the end. And the end offers us Jesus as a model of virtue to follow. So we have to read everything in light of Jesus at the end. Which is like, yeah, that's correct. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a good argument that kind of like re-mythologized the Bible, because it was the Bible for a long time. But I knew it was really there was that awkward period of the 2012 to like 15, probably I'd say, where you had Christians that would try to avoid using any kind of argument from scripture or any argument involving Christian texts, and they really argued in a pure deist rationalist mode, trying to meet the atheist halfway. And I'm glad to say it's kind of dead. That the Bible has been put back into its proper place of authority as a written document in the Western culture. And I think Jordan Peterson is really to blame for all that. Like he is the leading cause in that resurgence of biblical respect.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best point, the best thing that he did. I think your point is correct, that he did make the Bible more acceptable as part of rational discourse, as opposed to not. Yeah, and I think the only danger with that, the only danger that the potential danger that I see, so I'm not saying this is necessarily going to happen, but the potential danger is that Christians will again become lazy with their rational arguments as to where those same Bertrand Russell style arguments that the new atheists represented will just poke his head again and convince a new generation of young people. Because the problem of having scripture without the reason behind it is that it doesn't. This is what the Catholics do well, right? Is that they don't encourage really somebody to read the Bible and interpret it and stuff. Yeah. Like you have to read, biblical commentary by church doctors or other theologians and intellectuals, but really like what the main figures in the church teach about it. And they kind of want you to focus on those type of things which always has in a background the philosophical and theological framework that scripture can be comprehended in. The danger that I see with more and more young people not embracing the rational, the purely rational arguments for God, is that it could very quickly and easily, especially in a country like the United States, just become thumping again. And it seems like when you do that, they tend to lose the next generation, and it makes it just very easy.
Because they have kids and they begin to raise children in a very in practice a sola scriptura type household. Which then results into the questions. I mean, I remember I got asked to I'm not asked to leave or come back, but I was kind of asked to shut up I was in a youth group at my Protestant church. I started asking too many questions. I got asked to shut up.
Yeah.
Which eventually will let me define Thomas Aquinas, obviously, but to upside there. But that is a real concern. But I think the fact that one of the most popular podcasts of the last 2 years has been Father Mike Smith's Bible in a Year podcast is a positive sign that when people have biblical questions, because of the internet, we have a much more. I think the role of the internet played in the New Atheist is very interesting because it allowed for the spread of all the New Atheist argument, but it's also allowed for the faster spread of all the New Atheist arguments and the online culture and stuff. But then more and more, the internet became used as a sole means of discourse. The ability to research Christian texts and arguments became so much more, So now it's easy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's websites with all of St. Thomas Aquinas, and you can search by quote or by question to find the exact question you're looking for, which makes it super easy to find what Thomas Aquinas said about anything. So because the internet was the leading cause of the spread and the vitriol nature of the New Atheists, but also was a leading cause, maybe not the leading cause, but it was definitely a cause in its kind of decline, is that you can easily research biblical commentary text and proper theological argumentation.
I think you're right. Yeah. So it was a vehicle that helped like promote it and spread it, but it's also a vehicle that causes demise really in the end. And I think that's true. And I do agree with you that I think, people listening to Father Schmidt's interpretation of the Bible is a good sign because then it won't become just, people interpreting it and utilizing it for their own defense and everything. I just think that there is I don't know, like it just seems, and maybe just because I seen it happen, that I'm more paranoid than I probably should be. But it does just worry me a little bit that it seems like many people aren't focusing on the rich theology, the natural theology, as they used to call it, the natural theology for the basis of Christianity, than they are just getting more into the narrative aspects, which I think is just more advanced. Yeah. Like the understanding Scripture is it's a much more advanced thing that should be left to proper theologians.
Math literacy was a mistake. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And we should just be listening to their interpretations in order for us to kind of comprehend and be guided by, because it just isn't something that an ordinary person can do thoroughly and or correctly, or without beginning to collapse into contradictions.
Yeah.
Because it isn't that easy of a book to I should say collection of books, but the Bible is not something just simple that you could sit down, just flip the pages and come to the proper conclusions that many of the narrators are trying to put you towards.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that's all the clips and quotes from the New Atheist. I don't think there's anything else to talk about in relation to its rise, fall, and just kind of culturally dead. I mean, the fedora neckbeard meme killed it. Jordan Peterson killed it. The wokeness killed it because of the whole Islam thing. Politically, I mean, another one is that it's kind of, I think clearly the woke and the liberalism today it's a modern religion. It has its church, it has its ardent believers, it has its priests and popes. And so that's one thing I think that's been kind of, I'm really glad that's kind of being accepted and normalized, is the fact that you never get, religion is a constant of human nature. There will always be a religion of some kind. And the New Atheist did not understand that in the slightest. This is what I think if anyone wants to read specifically about this, Curtis Yarvin has a great series of essays called "The Time Dawkins Got Pwned," from like the 2012 or something, and he goes through a really great example and argument about how Harvard is just a church, that liberalism is a religion.
Right. Yes.
It's a great argument. I recommend everybody go read that. I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to find it easily, because it's a really good read. But Jeremy, any final thoughts on the New Atheist moment or anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, I think Yeah, it was an interesting moment, and I just hope that Christians remain diligent. That's really what I just want to always remain diligent, because it could come back. It wasn't the first time it was there. I think the Bertrand Russell style of atheism was obviously presented by Russell, and then it kind of faded away, especially after World War II, and then it just came back, and it's something that we just have to never really forget, because if we begin to forget the basics, you can begin to lose entire generation of people to fall for atheism, which is just
we've lost the millennials. I mean, the millennials are gone.
Yeah.
They're like what now? A lot of them, like now they're like 35, 38, 40, unmarried, working full-time jobs. I saw there's an article that came out recently from some lady in a some New York, I think it was a New York Times article. This lady was like, I'm 38, I have a successful job. Where are all the men? Why can't I find a man? Why is there so many of my lady friends who have their full-time job and are now like 40, can't find a husband? And it's like, well, biology is real. You probably can't produce children. You wasted it. And I think we're gonna have a real, within the next 10 to 20 years, as people get older and older and more miserable because they were sold a lie, bought into it, and now wasted their life. This is gonna be I don't know. It's tragic, really. They bought into the lie and wasted their one life, and I don't know what the solution or what you offer those people is besides saying, I'm sorry, it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what do you say to those people.
I know. Yeah, it's really sad, and you're right. I think the millennial generation was the ones that were sacrificed the hardest.
Yeah.
But the Zoomers, I think at least 50 of them are good.
Well,
the
just
other
the men,
50
though. That's the weird thing, is that it's really just the Zoomer men are the ones going back to churches. But it used to be normally women have way higher rates of religiosity than men do. It's kind of it's reversed now, and not only that, but the political divide between men and women is even further apart now. So now we have the furthest religious divide and the furthest political divide between men and women we've ever seen in the Zoomers and Alpha. I don't know how you. I mean, you're gonna find this real funny. There's a guy on TikTok. He debates. He's a liberal debater, Dean Withers. He's a young faggot-looking kid. Makes cringe arguments. Got absolutely owned by Nick Fuentes in a debate. If anyone listening, I know Nick Fuentes isn't loved by a lot of people, but he did a debate with Dean Withers, and Dean Withers thinks he's trapped him by saying, "Would you vote for a woman or would you vote for Hitler to be president?" And Nick was that missing. He goes, "Hitler! I'd vote for Hitler. I love Hitler."
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's a really fun debate. I recommend people check it out. But Dean Withers got owned so hard in debate by this attractive conservative guy. That the guy was receiving DMs from liberal women saying, "You're so hot, can you please stop supporting Trump?" Like he'll get DMs like that, and like it sets a weird divide. That the guy walked around DNC polling women about attractiveness, and they go, "Yeah, I want a man that votes Democrat but looks Republican." And I wonder how long it's going to be before the biological drive kills the liberal woman, or if the liberal woman is so co-opted and controlled by the religion of liberalism that they're just going to end up being another round of the 40-year-old single women who are just miserable. I don't know. And then you have the problem with the millennials the older millennials who are like Christian or success looking for a woman, they're going to Zoomers, so they're stealing even more of the women from the Zoomer men. And so now I just the demographic future was based on all this. I don't know what it's going to look like, and I'm very interested in seeing where it goes from here, because it's a weird time.
It is, I agree with you there, and it is interesting, and I'm really excited where things are going. I have been ever since changes happened quite immediately is in the beginning of 2025. The Trump one. I think a lot of people which are just different. I do think there's like weird schisms happening within the like the conservative movement, but I think overall it's been very positive, and I think a lot of the schisms that are happening is a good thing, because you don't really want like the anti-war libertarians around. just don't think
No.
we really do. They don't understand things. Like I understand the people who are like, you know, anti-Israel and stuff. That's fine, but the, you know, like the Dave Smith style, just complete anti-war propaganda. It's just silly because you can't erase war. You just can't. It's a factor of life. And
This is why I
that
think
doesn't.
the libertarians, no matter how right wing they think they are, or they are inherently left wing, because they view the problems of human nature as things to be solved by technological or cultural advancement and not as constants. And that's really the divide between right and left is, do you accept corruption, war, starvation, hunger, all these things as constants of the human condition, or problems to be solved by technology or culture? And if you say technology or culture,
exactly.
you're kind of on the left, because the right needs the right.
You are, yeah. You're a liberal already at that point. Yeah, I agree, because it's utopian. That's what it is. It's utopian, and you're not realizing the reality of things, and that's the thing that I like about Trump. You know, it's that no matter what, he does deal in reality. Now, some people are, you know, probably some of your listeners, you know, think that he's bought and paid for by Muriel Laderson or whatever. It's like, I don't care. I really don't. It's like, yeah, but he still deals in reality. He understands that he has to have allies, he has to have enemies, and that some people have a greater desire to destroy him and the country, and other people don't. And that, you know, I don't think it's as simple as how some people want to make it. And I know some of my listeners probably are a little annoyed with that, with my position, because I don't go full on with the whole "it's the Jews" thing. I do think that Jews do have a weird influence, and you see it through even the Middle East, and you see it like when Spain kicked them out and they began to flourish. I do think they're skeevy. They're people that like to infiltrate from within. You know, they don't care, and I think there's something really bad with their theology. I think rabbinicism is just an evil theology. It's really the only religion in the world that actually is negative about Jesus. Because not even the Mohammedans are negative about Jesus. Not even the you know, you're the Hindus. The Hindus even have worship Jesus as part of their collection of gods. And so it's like the only religion in the world that exists as contrary to Christ, that is anti-Christ.
Even the Zoroastrians send people to the birth of Jesus.
Yes,
the wise men. You know, at least even they acknowledge
even they
Jesus.
did. Yes, the only anti-Christian or the anti-Christ religion is rabbinicism, and so it's like, I do think there are some very bad and infiltrative qualities about you know, what Christ calls a synagogue of Satan, and all of that I do, but I just don't think that world politics can be simply reduced down to that.
Yeah, you can't reduce everything to one elite. You can't reduce it all to one elite group that controls everything. There's always competing elites.
Yeah, there's always competing elites. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what my position is when it comes to politics. And I think you just have to be pragmatic, because politics is pragmatic. Yeah, yes. I don't take politics as that serious. It's not, for me, it's not a great intellectual endeavor.
What's that quote from Bismarck on politics is the art of the practical, not the art. Sorry, politics is the art of the possible, not the
yes, yeah.
I only know from Civ 6.
Yes, you know, I don't know. Yeah, that is the art. It's the art of the possible. It's the art of what you can do pragmatically in the world. You don't have to hold on to some kind of ideology. Whenever a politician is too ideological, I don't believe them, and I don't trust them. I want the least ideologically principled politician, because as long as he's functioning in the world in a pragmatic way, it's a good thing. And that is what he does, and that's what he did, and that's what he has shown. Even what he calls a 12-day war. It's like, well, yeah,
I love that he named it himself. I love that he named it. It's so great.
And that he did what he said he was going to do, and it's over. Yes. Like he said what he's going to do, and people were freaking out, and I wasn't freaking out. I was like, why are you freaking out?
I trusted the plan. I am a plan
truster.
I am such a plan trust. I don't even check the news. I just know it's going to work out.
yes, it's gonna work out, man. Or like he could do so many things right, and then something seems questionable, they're like, oh my gosh, look at him, he's ruining everything. It's like, dude, hasn't he done something to at least give you the benefit of the doubt?
That's
what
for me J.D. Vance said. That's what J.D. Vance was saying. He earned the benefit of the doubt on this one. It's like, yes, he's so true.
Yeah, and now he did it again. And now, so if he could bomb somebody else, I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt. So he probably knows what he's doing. It seems like he's just flexing for a deal. They didn't do the deal. He was like, okay, and he did like it's what I do with my kids, right? There's one thing that my kids know is that I don't bluff. I just don't. If I tell them to do something, and I say that I'm going to do something, if they don't do it, they know that I'm going to enact that punishment. So I said, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. And I always tell them I don't repeat myself. And so if they didn't do it, I'm going to enact whatever punishment, because they know I do. I never bluff. And I think the way that Trump is that Trump just doesn't bluff. Right, that the way he has made deals in the private sector and the way he makes deals publicly is that he follows through with what he says he's going to do. And so if he's trying to make a deal with you and Iran thinks that they're going to call his bluff, you can't call his bluff, because then he's just going to bomb you, right? That's what's going to happen. Why then Bibi Netanyahu stopped after he called them stupid. Yes. And because he understands, okay, I cannot call Trump's bluff. If I keep this going, he's probably going to bomb me the way that he bombed Iran. And I think he would. I honestly do think that he would, because he doesn't bluff. And that's what's brilliant about his deal making. That's what made him brilliant as a businessman, and that's what makes him brilliant as a politician. And so people are just going to listen to what he does. And unfortunately, Iran thought that they could get away with it, and they didn't. And so now they love him, and they're trying to make a deal with him. And now he says nice things about them. He's like, oh yeah, they're always so good at making deals. They're always good business people. They're going to rebuild really well. And it's like, yeah, you see, this is what happens. You just don't fuck with him that way. And now the UN is calling him daddy. And it's just like, it's
so, I mean, the last few weeks,
Usher song, Daddy's Home.
Oh, the last few weeks have been so great. For one, seeing all the libertarians just waste their political capital with the administration over that chimp out over the Iran. Persia. I'm calling it Persia, not Iran, because it's just cool.
Persia.
That way.
Okay, yeah.
I am of the opinion Persia deserves a nuke, just because I think it's an ancient empire. It should have one, just because. I have no real argument besides that. Besides, Persia is just Persia. It's kind of cool.
It is.
So the libertarians wasting their political capital was great. Trump's walkout and saying we have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard they don't know what the fuck they're doing is awesome.
Yes,
was a great moment.
It was amazing.
I don't know if you saw it or not, but this is my favorite Trump moment of the last maybe ever. Was he was asked about the No Kings protests when people were protesting Donald Trump wanting to be king. And he said, I don't feel like a king. I got to fight like hell to get anything I want done. But he's saying that he's wearing a purple tie. This symbolism of the purple tie. So I don't feel like a king. It's awesome. Like, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
The aesthetic choice of the purple tie that day was beautiful.
Yeah. It was good. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the cultural changes. Like I was one of the voters that cared more about the culture. I think there was groups of people that care more about policy. I care about policy. I'm not saying that I don't care, but what I wanted to happen has already been happening now. And so I'm happy. Like the cultural changes are just there. Look what happened to that new Disney movie, that spin-off of the Iron Man. What is it called?
Ironheart, I think. Yeah.
Black chick. Yeah. That's just tanking. Nobody's watching it. People
George Floyd the droid. George Floyd the droid.
Yes, George Floyd. Yes, yeah. Like it's
so ass.
The culture is it just has changed now. Nothing that the left can do, it makes them look appealing. The more that they dig deeper, the more cringy they look. And now like New York is probably going to have the communist with that weirdo as a mayor, or he's probably just going to lose to Eric Adams. Maybe he's going to get support from everybody. He's independent. It's because the only people that want the left bullshit are the insane people, and everybody knows that. Everybody sees them like ordinary people, just view them as insane people now. They're like screaming and they're crying and they're still trying to protest. It's like, what are you guys doing? You look stupid. And so it's like that part of the culture that has changed for me. It's like beautiful, and I just wanted to keep going. Just keep changing, and it is because nobody wants to be. I shouldn't say nobody. The vast majority of people do not want to be that thing anymore. It really reminds me of how it felt in the late 90s, early 2000s, actually throughout the 2000s, all the way until 2015, really, of people not really wanted to be associated with George Bush and the Republicans. It was kind of like they were just cringy old white people, and they just weren't cool, and so it's like nobody really wanted to be associated with them. That's what happened. That's happening now to the left. It's like the average person doesn't really want to be associated with them. They would rather just say, "No, I'm actually independent." And the celebrities who are doing it well are the celebrities that nobody knows the politics of. Nobody knows like Sabrina Carpenter's politics, and so that's why she's being successful. People don't like Taylor Swift anymore. Why? Because she got political during the Harris campaign, and like everyone was talking about the Eras tours just like 8 months ago, and then all of a sudden it's like she got political, and people were like, "Fuck you! I don't like Taylor Swift anymore." Mm-hmm. And it's like the culture has changed so greatly that's what's winning now. Is like you see the that you do not know the politics about, that the celebrities that are being hyper feminine and the men who are being hyper masculine, they're the ones that people want to see. Now that new cover, I know some people are freaking out about the Sabrina Carpenter's new album cover. For the most part, everybody likes it. People like it. Why? Because she's being submissive.
The freak out is from the feminists saying she's putting feminism
from the feminists, yes.
Which has been a very funny. I'm on a lot of the feminist TikToks because I followed them to kind of keep my eye on it out of curiosity. Yeah. And one of the I think great changes has been they no longer view dressing slutty as empowering, and they actually get mad at other women for dressing too slutty because it says you're setting us back by appealing to male focused standards. And so there's been a real there's a split between people who say we need to dress actually feminine and not like sluts, and those who try to now dress like men. There's been the divide of the feminist passive comments, and it's been a very interesting thing to observe.
Yeah, and I'm loving things like that. Like I don't even listen to her music, but I like the fact that she is actually hyper feminine, and that that if pop culture is going to be degenerate to some degree, it should at least be degenerate with a proper order of things. Women should be submissive. She is submissive, and she doesn't pretend to be otherwise. She doesn't pretend to be, anything that she's not. And so it's like I am pretty happy with the way the culture has changed, and a lot of it really is due to due to Trump's victory, because I think the culture just has realized, and many people in the culture anyways has realized that that people don't want cultural figures being too political anymore. People just want ordinary. I think the same thing is happening like with Sydney Sweeney. Nobody really knows her politics, and she's feminine, and she's attractive, and so it's like people are just that's celebrities that people want to see. They want to see the ones that aren't protesting, that isn't trying to use their platform to push some agenda. No, this is a beautiful change that's happening. Feminine women and masculine men, and the people that you just don't know, and nobody really cares. They just want to see them, right? They want to just hear their music, or they want to see them act, and that's really it. And so, yeah, I think, you know, because I cared more about the cultural things, and all that stuff has been happening. For me, everything else is like extra cherries on top. You know, when he does things like what he did with Iran is like extra cherry on top. He does, you know, the tariff things, and then he gets his way. It's awesome. Like, I like that all those things are happening, but more than anything, it's like I love seeing the collapse of Taylor Swift. I love seeing the collapse, the whole woke culture, the whole cancel culture. All of that is dead, and it's getting deeper down the grave that nobody cares anymore. Like, it's like they just don't care. Yeah.
That was the main reason I voted for Trump, was less about policy. I recognize that voting for Trump shifts the Overton window. That's all.
Yes, exactly.
Voting for Trump widens the Overton window, and if Vance runs, he'll widen it even more.
He will.
We broke open the Overton window. We can now talk about. I mean, how common is the meme? I'm not dying for fucking Israel. You know.
I know. Yes. Yeah.
We've opened over the window so much now. We have access. I mean, and the Ted Cruz interview with Tucker Carlson. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the over the window is so much. We're having actual discussions about Israel's influence on U.S. policy. That would not have happened under anyone else.
That people can now question whether 6 million Jews were actually killed. It's like these questions now can be asked, and it can be discussed, whether you think it was the correct number, whether you think everything that Hitler did was evil. And so it's like that's what I wanted, right? Like what you said, it shifted over to the window. That's all that was the main thing, is that we were so on the wrong track, like so fundamentally on the wrong track, that we couldn't discuss things like people used to discuss on a fucking Oprah show back. You could find clips of her having guests that were talking about the Holocaust. And one person was debating that he actually thinks he agrees with the Blue Cross Blue Shield numbers, which is like 250,000 people. Another person says, well, we think the 6 million is too much. We think maybe it's close to 2 million. And it was like you had like these discussions open in TV, and nobody was calling them like, you're a Holocaust denier or you're anti-Semitic. It was just different historians and different scientists were discussing whether certain things were possible. Like, could you really cremate that many bodies in that short of time? And it's like, it's coming back to that. And hopefully it goes even beyond that. That's what I want. I want it to go even beyond to what we had in the 90s. I want the Overton windows to be shifted so fucking far that we could literally talk about dragons again.
Yes.
I want to be shifted so far that nothing is off the table, right? Do dragons exist? Have they existed? Do they currently exist? What are, what is the nature of a fucking angel or the fairy? It's like, these are the things that we need to push it towards. And right now it's just the beginning, and I want to keep going, just keep going. The nigga How Hitler thing was a huge movement that happened, and just keep pushing it. People. We cannot stop.
YouTube right? censors Jeremy on YouTube censors. Jeremy is a quarter black. He's allowed to say it.
Okay.
YouTube censors. He is a quarter black. Okay. He was an hour late. He's a quarter black. We're allowed to. He's allowed to say it. YouTube.
I'm sorry. I forgot it was on YouTube.
It's all good.
But yes, it's like all these figures have actually done, and I think that we cannot stop it. Like, if we stop because we think that we push it far enough, it's like, fuck no. They pushed it to the point that culturally we were chopping little kids' dicks off. Okay, we weren't chopping it, but we were giving castration medication. We were giving them puberty blockers. We were convincing everybody. Like they strolled out that one like 6-year-old on I think. Was it Dr. Phil's show back like 10 years ago, who was dressed in drag and everything? It was like that's how far they fucking pushed it. No, we got to push it back to the conversation of dragons. We're not even remotely far enough. We have to keep going. You question Hitlerism, fine, question Hitlerism, but now also question everything. and keep pushing back. What is reality? What is true? What are the things that we have to believe in? What is magic? We have to talk about magic again, because are we still functioning in a world of magic? It seems like we are. We just don't call it magic anymore. We call it other names. And so this is what I mean. It's like this cultural shift, this rupture that voting for Trump and Trump's victory did was beautiful. And I think what Kanye West did was beautiful. He's a weirdo. I don't know what he actually believes. I don't care. But he was publicly calling himself a Nazi. He was publicly open about this stuff. Beautiful, because that is what the culture needed, and more
Kanye
figures
West,
just need to do that. Yeah.
I want to talk about Kanye West for a minute before we wrap this up, because I love Kanye. I think if I was talking to my coworker about Kanye, who thinks Kanye's just a fucking idiot, and I made the argument, like, to put it in the most insane terms, Kanye is trying to be a messianic like figure who takes on all the cancellations of cancel culture and ends it.
Yes,
that's what he's trying to do. It's like he was a black Klansman singing "Hail," singing. Not going to say the full line, but singing "Hail Hitler."
Yes,
it's a black Klansman. He's taking on all the sins of cancel culture. Is what he's trying to do, and I think history is going to view Kanye if any one of this time period is talked about, it's going to be Trump and Kanye. Those are the two figures of history that will be forever talked about.
That's exactly what I believe, and I think anybody that doesn't understand that doesn't really get what he did, and how much that changed in our culture. Like what Kanye did, because I was discussing with some people, and some people just don't think that he was authentic. I was like, that's not really what the point is. I don't care whether he was authentic or not. I really don't, because it was his actions that mattered. You're defined by what you do, and not really just hold in the deepest recesses of your heart. No, it's what you fucking do about it. And what he did was that he finally became what he always wanted to be, right? And so like when he said George Bush doesn't care about black people, he really wasn't that controversial. I'm sorry, people were already saying that.
That clip is so funny though. Watching, I know the actors next to him, his eyes go wide, and it cuts to Chris Tucker.
I know,
yeah. It's so funny. I love that clip so much.
Hilarious. But Kanye wasn't really breaking any grounds there, because a lot of people already were saying that. You watch MSNBC, they already were saying shit like that, and they weren't saying it probably as colorful as he did, but that's what the implication was constantly by many people. Whenever he was saying that he was the most influential person in the world, well, you were big in the rap scene, but Drake was bigger, and so it's like you weren't what you to be. What happened when he was like, dun dun dun, nigga, how Hitler done? What he did in that moment, right? What he did in that fucking moment was that he finally became that figure, that iconic figure who actually was controversial, who actually went against the grain and created a summer song of the most, taboo in the Western world right now. And by creating that song, he also killed the taboo, and he also killed the mythical figure of Hitler. And so it's like this is beautiful, because now we could look at him as a human being, not as the devil incarnate. We could now look at him and discuss about him as he was a human. And there's going to be a lot of people that are pro Hitler out there. Fine, it's great. I really don't care, because I don't believe he's the devil. I think he was just a fucking political figure, and he had some good ideas, and he was disappointed in some ways. Like, I don't like the fact that he was a vegetarian. That's kind of gay, right? That's not very cool. It's a gay thing to be a vegetarian, to be animal rights. Fuck you, Hitler. Don't be animal rights. But and so it's like we can view him as he is a human. Flaws with his virtues, what he did and what he warned the rest of us about, those things were good. And so it's like, this is why I think what Kanye did, like you said, it's what's going to be lasting. Trump and Kanye out of this entire movement is going to be the most lasting figures, because they're the ones that rupture the Overton window to the point that now we can keep pushing it further to where we want it to be.
What is the point? I made with a few friends of mine about this, is that they're very worried about the hateful rhetoric coming out of the anti-Zionist, anti-Jewish I love Hitler camp.
Yeah.
And I'm not so worried about it, because I point to Aristotle's example about the stick. If a stick is bent one direction, you want to bend it back, you got to bend it further the other direction before it snaps back in the center. I think that's what we're going to see as a cultural, it's going to overcorrect, then we'll go back to the center. I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing the beginning of the overcorrection, which is going to go really far and be really crazy, but it's slowly going to snap back to the center. We're going to have more of a sensible conversation around everything. I think agree, that's we see that in history at all. That's why Aristotle's example is on the stick is so good, because it can be applied to so many different things.
It is, yes. Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Okay, well, that wraps us up, I think. Sammy, what can be any final thoughts and anything you want to say, and where can people find you at?
Yeah, no final thoughts. It was a really good discussion. You could find me either on Twitter, Dr. Diogenes, or just type in Jeremy Kubis, you'll be able to find me. And a host of Contra Gentiles. I don't think I put an episode out for the last 4 weeks now, but yeah, I'm looking to record again. It's just been kind of, summer started, and my business just kicked my ass past 4 to 5 weeks. But yeah, I'm looking to record again, trying to get more guests on, and
fantastic. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Have a good night and God bless.